plant community, thanks for tuning into this channel. For those of you who are new, welcome. My name is Pam, and today's topic, you guys, is anthuriums. Now, I'm going to shine the spotlight on one particular anthurium, but before we get to that, let's just talk a little bit about some of the background. Now, anthuriums, for those of you who may not be aware, they are part of the Raceae family, which means that they're more or less like considered an aroid. And this genus has over about 1,000 species. Now, of course, you guys, our social media platforms has been shining a light on those rare anthuriums, such as the Heucherii, the Clanervium, the Radicans, and let's not forget the Crystallanum. Now, these plants, they are beautiful and they do deserve to be in the spotlight. Don't get me wrong. I love the foliage on all of the plants that I just made a mention, and they do deserve to be recognized. But for those of you who may have been watching me for some time, I do like to take the opportunity to shine the spotlight on those beautiful plants that bring us much joy as the most rare plants, but you don't hear many people talking about it. So I'm going to introduce this baby right here. You may see a little bit sticking out, but I'm about to show you guys the full plant, and that's the Anthurium big red bird. Now bear with me, you guys, because I brought it on a stand because it's kind of heavy, but I wanted to show you. If I am able to, I'll try to see if I can provide a picture or photo of it, but I wanted to bring it to you kind of like live to give you a real feel. And here it is. Now we can look at this thing and actually see why it's actually called the big red bird. Now, if you've been also watching my channel, you may have seen one of my plant hauls or where I'm actually showing this beautiful specimen that you guys see before you. I have not had this thing for a year, but it's given me tremendous joy. And I just love the foliage on here. It's such a big specimen, and it really can provide like a statement piece if it's placed in the proper area in your home. Now, one of the things, of course, why I love this plant so much, as I just mentioned, would be the size. But did you know that this plant could actually grow to be 2 to 3 feet tall, and the leaves come in green, and then later on they can turn red. Now, I don't really have an example of that because this plant does need some form of light to bring that out. But let's just go into the care tips, since I did talk about the light. As I just mentioned, you guys, to bring out that beautiful red hue that this plant is known for having, you do have to have it in bright indirect light. It doesn't need direct light, even though it might can take an hour or two of direct light, because the leaves, you guys, even though if the camera doesn't look it, you hear that? It's kind of thick. And I love the bird nest way that it's giving. And if you look at it, it does have like a little hint of red. Now, when the new leaves come in, they do come in traditionally green, and as they mature over time, they will turn a little dark. So just to give you an idea, you may actually see the actual, this is a new leaf, you guys, that just came in, and if you compared it to like this leaf, you can see the contrast in color. Now let's talk about soil. Now this plant does like to stay moist, as most of our anthuriums do. So you might want to try, if you're going to go the soil route, I'm going to show you something a little later. The organic matter would work excellent for this plant, you guys, such as your sphagnum moss. Now when you water this plant, like I said before, it likes to stay moist and not wet. So you would water this plant literally when 1 inch of the soil is dry. And so if you've been watching me, the knuckle test, stick your finger in that soil. The first knuckle represents 1 inch, second knuckles represent 2 inches of the soil. When it's at that 1 inch, your first knuckle, and you feel that it's dry, it's time to give it a nice drink, you guys. Now in regards to humidity, it does need to be at least 50% humidity in an environment in order for this plant to thrive. So you don't want to really go lower than that. This plant can be a little sensitive, so it can take a dive. Would I recommend this plant for a beginner plant parent? I really wouldn't, but I technically would not recommend any of the anthuriums, because some can be easygoing and some can really be finicky as far as what they prefer. Now I use it for, as far as fertilizer to you guys, I do use the same amount of fertilizers across the globe with all my plants, across my plant collection across the globe. Sometimes I say the darndest things, but back to the plants. Fertilizer, I do use the same quarter strength of fertilizer with all my plants. And it, like I said, I don't want to change it or make anything more difficult for me and my collection than what it may be, considering I have a semi good sized collection. Now, propagating these plants, you guys, the most successful way to propagate would only be, I would recommend through separation if you're able to detangle the leaves. I'm not 100% sure if you would be able to do it by actually pulling a leaf. I would actually have to test that theory, but honestly, you guys, I want to test that theory probably on a smaller anthurium. I'm just so in love with this plant and the size, I really wouldn't want to do anything to disturb it or disrupt it. Now, let's go back. Let's talk about the temperature a little bit. This is a tropical plant, you guys. You want to keep in mind that you want to try to keep the temperature somewhere between the 65 to 85 degree range. Now, of course, in our homes, we would not feel comfortable at all in the 85 degree range environment, but 65 is, at least in my home, is like the traditional range, and it tends to love it. Now, I haven't had any experience with any pests, but there are common pests among this particular variety, which would be like your aphids, brown scale thrips, and of course mealybugs. But if you do some form of pre-pest management, I'm quite sure you won't have any of those issues. So from time to time, and considering, especially since this plant is big, I do try to wash it down or rub the leaves very much so with neem oil, and I do wash it with insecticidal soap. I do that about maybe 3 times out of the year, and so far, or every quarter. I haven't really had this plant for a year yet, but I'm trying to incorporate this schedule like I do with the majority of my plants as far as trying to do pre-pest management. Something else I wanted to share with you guys too in regards to this plant, when it blooms, the blooms. Now the blooms, you guys, it comes out like a spedex, more common like a bloom of peace lily blooms, and I believe it can be like a reddish color. I'm not 100% sure. When I got this plant, I did have a bloom, but the bloom was almost just completely gone. So I never had a chance or opportunity to experience what the fullness of this bloom, but it is more, like I said, a spedex with a reddish hue to it. But I'm going to share something with you guys. I made a mention about the soil and how to test the soil. Now, I'm going to show you something. When I first was getting this plant, the root system was so tight, I kind of like had to up pot it in here. And when I did that, it did not even like it, or I wasn't able to maintain the moisture or possibly the humidity. But I want to lean more towards the moisture of this plant. And I started losing the lower leaves, started turning yellow one by one. But guys, I love this plant so much, I had to make an executive decision. So let me show you exactly what I did. And ever since I've done that, it's just been giving me new growth. It was something new that I was trying. You know, I love experimenting with things to see what actually works. And I'm glad that this experimentation that I did worked in my favor. So I no longer have this plant in soil. I have it growing specifically. Pull it out. Look at that. I have it specifically in a sandwich bag, and I sit it inside this planter, and I have pumice in there. Pumice and a little bit of my fertilized water. I took it out. I made an executive decision to remove the soil from it in an effort to try to save it, because it wasn't declining, but I didn't like how a lot of the lower leaves were starting to turn yellow. It was falling off. I didn't see any new growth. And like I said, I love this plant a lot. I wanted to save it. So I took a chance. I removed the dirt as much as possible, and I actually decided, I said, I'll try it just to see. If it wasn't going to work back into my favor, I planned on trying something else. But I decided to actually put the pumice in this bag, something to hold it in, and I just use a little bit of my fertilized water, and I fill it like a quarter of the way. And literally, you guys, I kid you not, when I've done that, I haven't lost any leaves thus far, because this was my method, my thought process. You know, I'm not a botanist. I'm only going to share with you all my experiences, whether they pass or fail, and then maybe you can make a decision of whether or not if you want to try it in your own collection. You know, sometimes we dare to be adventurous, so to speak, when it comes to our plant babies. But back to the plant. What was I actually saying about it? As soon as I stopped doing that, my thought process was, okay, this plant does like a lot of humidity, and it likes to stay moist. And I figured if I water it this way, pumice is a very good planting medium to have, where it does give that beautiful aeration between the water and your soil. You can actually put the pumice in soil as well, but I'm just using it completely as is. And I figured that the water that's evaporating, that's encased in this huge actual freezer bag that I have it sitting in, would provide the plant with the humidity that it needs. And I never really have to worry about the moisture level, as long as I make sure that quarter of the bag is maintaining the level of water. And ever since I've done that, it's pushed out new growth. I'm going to actually, let's see, I took it out of the pot, and I probably shouldn't have, because I had it like nice and centered in the pot. But ever since I've done that, you guys, this leaf came in. This leaf right here is the newest leaf that's just recently shot up. I have one here, you guys. This is a new baby as well, and I haven't lost any more leaves. It's just been giving me new growth. I have it sitting on a stand that's sitting in my dining room, you guys, and it's getting that nice bright indirect light from one of my Sansi light, and it's getting some dappled light coming from my window. But I really believe that because the light that's in my dining room is not as bright and as intense as it can be in my sunroom here, the artificial light is probably what's keeping it really afloat. And like I said, ever since I've done that, it's just given me nothing but joy. And I'm really glad that I have this in my collection. When I brought this plant, I couldn't believe it. This plant was initially, I think, $50, but I didn't want to buy it at that price, to be honest with you. I had to wait for it to come down. And so I think when it went down like $15, so it was like $35. And when I got it, like I said, you guys, the majority of my plants that I get, I do order online from various locations. And this particular location, I did not, the picture that was online for this plant didn't really do it justice at all. So I was pleasantly surprised for the size of it and how full it is. But I can't really have it in the sunroom. I think this would be very competitive, I think, with my Monstera deliciosa that I'm trying to have grow in as a beautiful specimen over here. So it really doesn't have a place in here without it looking a little hoarderish. And I like to style my plants with some form of decor in your home where it doesn't look like just a pile of foliage all over the place, because sometimes, depending on how we place our plants, it can turn into a beautiful exotic atmosphere to just a hot mess. And so I don't want that for the way I'm styling my plants. So that's one of the reasons why I put it in the dining room. But I wouldn't move it from there really, because I do believe it does love that artificial light, and I couldn't be any prouder. But I'm gonna give you one last look, you guys. You gotta admit, this plant is gorgeous, you guys. And it's not too much of a difficult take care the way that I'm doing it. Like I said before, I wouldn't recommend it for a beginning plant parent. But if you have varieties of plants in your collection for some time and you fully understand the humidity as far as energy as well as maintaining moisture, then this is definitely the plant to go. I do believe that this plant is probably, it's like one of those bird nest anthuriums, so it's a little bit more, not as finicky as I would say the crystallanum or maybe even the clanervium for that case. Now I haven't had neither one of those plants, but just from listening to other people, the experiences of other people, I would honestly say that this is probably an easier care plant. So let me just sit this right here. So that pretty much wraps this segment up, you guys. You want to keep in mind, if you love foliage as much as I do and you love listening to planting things, subscribe to this channel. I'm having a blast talking with you guys. I thank each and every last one of my subscribers. I thank each and every last one of you who have been commenting. I love interacting with you guys. Let's keep the conversation going. This channel is about us growing together as a plant community, so definitely subscribe to this channel. Give me a big thumbs up to give me that support. I appreciate any support you guys can give me. Or you can give me a thumbs down. If you don't like this kind of thing, that's okay too. It's your right, you know. But enjoy your day wherever you are in the world, you guys, and until next time, much love. Give you one last look before we say goodbye.